Hey guys, got exciting news for you. GoPro has just confirmed that the GoPro Fusion 2 is coming. This is not just a firmware update, but this is actually a new 360 camera. So when is it coming? What are its features? And should you wait for it? Or should you get the GoPro Fusion at a discounted price? Or should you buy another 360 camera such as the Insta360 One X? We're going to discuss that in this video. So first, we're going to talk about the background on the GoPro Fusion. Why is this news so important to the 360 community? Then let's talk about the likely features, the ones that GoPro itself has already announced, and some of my predictions. Then we'll talk about whether you should wait for the next Fusion or should jump on the discounted price for the GoPro Fusion right now. By the way, if you're new to this channel, my name is Mick. And this channel is all about 360 and 3PV cameras. So if you want to learn more about this exciting new way to shoot your photos and videos, go ahead, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. First, let's talk about the GoPro Fusion. When it came out in 2017, it revolutionized the 360 industry. Why? Because of its amazing image quality, both for photos and videos. Now what's remarkable is that even in 2019, the GoPro Fusion still has one of the best image quality among 360 cameras. So there are a lot of people who love the Fusion, myself included, and we've all been waiting for the next version, the Fusion. Now, but in around November of 2018, GoPro announced the layoff of the staff that it acquired from Color, the VR software company that it had previously acquired. After this layoff, many people assumed that GoPro was no longer interested in VR or 360. I was one of those people who thought that. But around January of 2019, there were a couple of developments that changed that. One is that GoPro announced a new firmware update for the Fusion that increased the resolution from 5.2K to 5.6K. Now the other thing that happened was that there was this interview between PC Magazine and CEO Nick Woodman. And in that interview, Nick announced that GoPro was still interested in 360 and was working on the successor for the GoPro Fusion. Now by the way, if you didn't know about that PC Magazine interview, you might be wondering, how do I get this kind of information? Now it's really easy. All you gotta do is go to 360rumors.com. It's kind of like Wikipedia and news for the 360 industry. With that one resource, you'll be able to keep up to date with the latest news and reviews and tutorials for 360 cameras. Now of course, this was just a magazine interview. It's very informal, and we couldn't really know if that was reliable information or it was just wishful thinking from Nick Woodman. But fast forward to May 2019, there was a sudden drop in prices for the GoPro Fusion. Recall that when it first came out, it was at $699. Then it eventually went down to $599. At first, like on some sales, but then it became somewhat permanent, and then became $499, and then started dropping to $399 in 2019. And then there was a sudden sale by Best Buy at $299. It was also followed by B&H Photo also selling their Fusion at $299. So this raised a lot of questions. Was this going to be a clearance sale? And is that because there would be no more GoPro Fusions? Or did that mean that there was a new Fusion coming? Finally, a couple of days ago during the GoPro earnings call for Q1 2019, Nick Woodman announced to the world that, in fact, GoPro is working on its next 360 camera. Mind you, this was an earnings call. This is you do not make jokes about it. You have to say, like, everything has to be pretty much accurate, as you will have to give your investors the best available information. So this is not just like blustering, this was real. So let's talk about the next GoPro Fusion. Let's just call it GoPro Fusion 2, even though they haven't said the name. Now, when is it coming and what are its likely features? So first of all, in the earnings call, Nick Woodman said that it was going to be released Q4 of 2019 along with other GoPro products. which part of Q4? Is it going to be toward December, or is it going to be like an early part of Q4 like October? Now we don't know for sure, but in 2017 when GoPro announced the Fusion, they talked about launching it around December, and it turned out that they actually launched it much earlier than that, in October. So it's quite possible that GoPro may also release the GoPro Fusion 2 around October. So what are the features of the GoPro Fusion 2? So first, let's talk about the features that GoPro has already confirmed or has strongly implied. Number one is stabilization. GoPro knows that one of the keys to the success of this new 360 camera, and they know how important stabilization is to the action camera market. So we can expect that the next Fusion will have really good stabilization. I mean, the original Fusion also already had great stabilization, but this one could be even better. Now, in the PC Magazine interview, Nick Woodman also said that the next Fusion will probably have less emphasis on VR. From GoPro's point of view, VR is entertaining, especially to gamers, but sometimes we just want to relax. So Fusion 2 will likely have much less emphasis on 360 and VR, and instead will be focusing on over capture. So GoPro's emphasis for the Fusion 2 is to enable people to capture videos that they wouldn't otherwise be able to capture using traditional cameras. Another characteristic of the Fusion 2 will be the ease of use. Again, Nick talked about VR and how sometimes it creates the fear of missing out when you're not sure whether you're looking at the right thing or the most interesting thing in a 360 video. Now, the good thing with 360 is that you can reframe it so that you can show whichever point of view that you want. But this adds another layer to your workflow. And Nick's vision for the Fusion 2 will be to make it easy to use, as easy to use as a traditional camera. Now, if we read between the lines, it's possible that the Fusion 2 may have a feature that I have yet to see in a consumer 360 camera, which is real-time stitching with stabilization. I've seen that only in pro cameras right now, like Insta360 Pro, Pro 2, and Pilot Era. I haven't seen that in a consumer 360 camera yet. So the Fusion 2 may be the first 360 camera for consumers to have real-time stitching with stabilization. You'll be able to take your videos straight out of the camera and they'll be stabilized without you having to do any stitching. Now, even if you have real-time stitching with stabilization, that only solves part of the problem. See, you'll end up with a 360 video that's stabilized, but you'll still have to keyframe it. And that's going to add another layer to your workflow, just as Nick said. So I think GoPro Fusion 2 will actually work with Quick, the GoPro Quick app. So the Quick app will likely be able to choose perspectives for you, and just like the current Quick app, it will be able to sync them to music. So I'm predicting that we'll see like transitions within 360 synced to music. And this is something that GoPro is interested in as well, because with a Plus subscription, you'll be able to upload your GoPro Quick videos to the cloud. It's going to help GoPro generate additional revenues from its Plus subscriptions. Now, what about other aspects of the Fusion? Well, Nick hasn't said anything about them yet, but we can make some educated guesses. First, let's talk about resolution. Right now, the Fusion is at 5.6K. Is it possible that the Fusion 2 will have a higher resolution, substantially higher resolution, such as 8K? So as of now, Q2 2019, you can't really find a sensor for consumer cameras that's greater than 4K in terms of video capture. So if you have only two lenses in a camera and each of them is around 4K resolution, then the most that you can get is 6K. You can't get more than that. You can't get 8K unless you interpolate it, and that wouldn't add any real detail. The only way for Fusion 2 to be 8K is if they add more than two lenses, and that's not likely for several reasons. Number one, it will make stitching much more complicated and challenging. Second, it's going to increase the price dramatically. And we've already seen that GoPro seems to be pushing the Fusion at the lower price range. So it's not likely that Fusion 2 will be 8K. Although I don't expect a substantially higher video resolution from Fusion 2, it's possible that the photo resolution might indeed be higher. Because the current Fusion has a photo resolution of 5760 by 2880, but there are several other 360 cameras that have substantially higher resolution, such as, for example, the Xiaomi Mi Sphere, which has a 24 megapixel resolution. So it's possible that GoPro may choose a sensor that has a higher photo resolution. There are several available. Now, what about dynamic range? Right now, Fusion already has great dynamic range for both photos and videos, but the Insta360 One X has better dynamic range than the Fusion, particularly in the HDR video mode. So this HDR video mode is a Sony sensor technology, and GoPro may add this technology by using a Sony sensor. So that's possible. That's one way they can extend dynamic range. Now let's talk about, should you wait for it, or should you get the Fusion at a discounted price? Right now you can get great deals on the GoPro Fusion. You can get them at $399 or sometimes even $299. So just to give you some background, again, it was originally at $699, and I was glad to pay $699 for it because I really love the image quality. Now at $299, oh my gosh, it's such a good deal. Now, but is it a better deal than the Insta360 One X? Well, let's compare the two. First, let's talk about the GoPro Fusion strengths. Number one is it's waterproof without a case. So it's really easy to use it outdoors, even in wet environments or even underwater. Now, mind you, the stitching underwater isn't that great. It's not designed for that, but at least you can use it without worrying whether your camera will get damaged or if your case will leak. We'll get to that later. Another advantage of the Fusion is its excellent image quality for both photos and videos. For videos, its bitrate is very high, and you can see that, let's say if you're pointed at the sky, you'll see less banding compared to the Insta360 One X. Now for photos, again, the resolution is not that high, at least on paper, but it actually has a lot of detail. And in my comparison with the Theta Z1 and other 360 cameras, I found that the Fusion had one of the most detailed photos among consumer 360 cameras in RAW mode. Finally, the Fusion has GPS without being connected to a phone. Now let's talk about the Insta360 One X. So the One X has several advantages over the GoPro Fusion. Number one is the mobile workflow. The mobile workflow for the Insta360 One X is the best in the industry. And the GoPro Fusion, on the other hand, has an incomplete app, especially for Android, and it's kind of tedious to share 360 photos and videos unless you're going directly to Facebook or YouTube. The One X, on the other hand, has a great mobile workflow. It's really easy to use, whether you want to export 360 photos, 360 videos, or over capture photos or videos. It's really easy from within the app. The Insta360 One X is also unique in having a no-stitch workflow. If you're using Adobe Premiere, you'll be able to take files straight from the camera that are unstitched and be able to use them in Premiere as if you've already stitched them. This is not only easier and faster, but it also improves the image quality by avoiding one more level of compression. Now the One X also has excellent time shift capability. Do a speed ramp from fast to slow, and it's really cool. Now the Fusion does have a hyperlapse feature, but the One X's time shift feature one-ups the Fusion's hyperlapse feature. Another one of my favorite features for the Insta360 One X is the HDR video mode. It really does increase the dynamic range tremendously, and there's only a very slight drop in image sharpness and detail, so I use it almost all the time. And yes, you can use it even when the camera is moving. The One X also has Insta360 stats, which is the ability to add an overlay to your 360 videos that shows statistics like your speed, your altitude, things like that. And it's really cool, especially when you have like motorsports. If you're using the One X for motorsports, it's superb. Well, so should you wait for the Fusion 2 though? Well, to me, the biggest reason to wait for it would be this new feature that makes it easy to use. But what if there was a way to get that right now with the Insta360 One X? Well, that'll be the topic of my next video. So I'll see you in 360.